Hi, my name is Bill Braniff, and in this module, Conceptual Frameworks for Understanding Global Jihadism, we'll be providing you with an Al-Qaeda case study within the broader context of global jihadism. This is somewhat different, I think, from the way that we often think about a terrorist organization like Al-Qaeda. Really, any organization, we often hold them up close and personal, try to understand the inner workings of the organization, and therefore understand how the organization is going to affect the world outside of them. I think that that's somehow that gives too much power to the organization, and that it's more useful to see the organization in the context in which it lives. It's often competing with or collaborating with organizations, movements, society, outside of the organization itself, and that's often dictating how the organization behaves to just as great an extent as its own internal desires. So we're going to look at Al-Qaeda through a number of different lenses, through a grand historical lens, a theological lens, a political lens, a virtual lens, and finally through a modern historical lens, in which we'll trace the evolution of the global jihad to its current conceptual status. Before we begin, I want to provide a note on terminology. When I use the term jihadism or jihad in this lecture, I'm not using it as a synonym for the greater jihad, struggling or striving to be a better Muslim. I'm not even really referring to the classical understanding of the lesser jihad, which is using the military to expand or protect the borders of the Muslim empire historically. Instead, I'm referring to a modern and inherently violent ideology specific to Al-Qaeda and its associated movements. This is not an indictment of Islam and not an indictment of the Muslim world. In fact, it's the opposite. It's really a study of an organization that has inflicted tremendous levels of violence on the Muslim world. So why focus on Al-Qaeda for this case study and the broader global jihadi movement of which it's a part? I mean, if you think about it, Al-Qaeda was not really even responsible for a single attack in 2012. The United States and many of its allies have inflicted tremendous damage upon Al-Qaeda core. So why focus on this organization? I would argue that although Al-Qaeda Central or Al-Qaeda core was not directly responsible for any attacks in 2012, the 6 deadliest terrorist groups in the world were all affiliated with some extent to Al-Qaeda. These include the Taliban with more than 2,500 fatalities, Boko Haram with more than 1,200 fatalities, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula with more than 960 fatalities, the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan with more than 950 fatalities, Al-Qaeda in Iraq with more than 930 fatalities, and Al-Shabaab more than 700 fatalities. Terrorism touched 85 countries in 2012, but just 3, Pakistan, Iraq, and Afghanistan, suffered more than half of 2012's attacks, so 54% of attacks, and more than half of its share of fatalities at 58%. The next most 5 frequently targeted countries were India, Nigeria, Somalia, Yemen, and Thailand. So this illustrates a shift of the location of terrorism from North America, Western Europe, to the Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia. But not only that, in 2012, there were more than 8,400 terrorist attacks, which killed more than 15,400 people, compared to previous highs over the last decade and really over the last 43 years. The previous high for the number of attacks was in 2011 with around 5,000 incidents. For fatalities in 2007, 12,500 deaths. So the short answer is that there is more terrorism in the world today than ever before. It is more lethal, it affects the Muslim world more than anyone else, and the 6 deadliest groups are found in the global jihadist milieu, of which Al-Qaeda sits at the conceptual center.